All right, I think we are live. Welcome back to another episode of Mitten Athletics Live, brought to you as always by Mitten Athletic Supplies, your one-stop shop for all of your Gill athletic equipment, centralized here in Michigan, Western Michigan, but you let us know what you need, and we're here for you. So come talk to us, and we'd love to help you out.
I gave that one a B.
Okay, well, all right.
Improving.
We'll take it. All right. Today we have another guest. Today, bringing in Ryan Banta. Ryan, without taking too much of your story away from you, why don't you give us a quick synopsis on who you are, where you're coaching, your background, how you got into it?
Yeah, sure. So a frustrated sprinter, early mature. I was the guy that everybody wanted to see the birth certificate on when I was like in, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. And then I never grew an inch after sixth grade, at least in height. I've gotten a little thicker, and more muscular over time, but I didn't grow after that. And, spent a lot of time injured and had, mixed results in high school. And then in college, similar experience with some mixed results. Went to Carthage College, small school in Kenosha, Wisconsin. When I graduated with a degree in political science and a minor in history and Asian studies. I did a lot of stuff when I was at college. I was president of the college. I was president of my fraternity. I founded the fraternity. I participated in football, but I would never say I was a player, but I was on the football team. I was a pretty better than average Division III sprinter in cold Wisconsin, which, is just directly west of you guys across that old Lake Michigan.
Yep.
And so I never got to run in warm conditions. We didn't really have an indoor facility. Now we have one of the best. Carthage has one of the best in the United States for Division III, especially. So anyway, when I graduated, I had an opportunity to work for a congressman in Washington, D.C., but I'm an only child of only children. And so my parents didn't want me to go off to D.C. And truth be told, like when I got the job, they treated it as if I was already late. And I'm like, well, do you guys have any like congressional assistant housing or like, is there, do you have some kind of network? No, none of that. It's just like, you need to be here yesterday, even though we gave you the job today. And I had an opportunity to work for Walmart Corporation as like a manager for them. And I could work on some political campaigns locally. And so I did that. But what they tell you about politics is that it's a dirty business, and that's absolutely true. A couple of the guys that I worked for were not the most morally sound individuals, it turned out, and I didn't want my young, early career to be attached to that. But I also didn't want to work for Sam's Club, where they were about to move me to Wichita, Kansas, and then Topeka after that when I complained, when they promised me I was going to open up a store right up the street from my house in Missouri. And I had come back to Missouri to live in Missouri. If I didn't want to live in Missouri, I certainly wouldn't have chosen Kansas over working for a congressman in Washington, D.C. No offense if anybody ever listens to this from Kansas, but your state is not awesome. It's boring. And I don't want to be there.
Well, we said
empty promises from a large corporation?
Yeah.
So weird. So weird.
Exactly. So, and so basically my mom was always pushing on me to be a teacher. And my mom was like the teacher. We have a 5-district with it's one alternative high school and 4 other regular high schools. She was teacher of the year for that entire school district, was like one of the semifinalists for the state teacher of the year. She was the charter cable arts educator of the year. They were making up awards to give my mom. She's like, like for real. And she's like, oh, well, you'd be a great teacher. And I'm like, Mom, I don't think I can do what you did. And I said, but you know what? Maybe I'll go ask old Coach Warren if I can help him out. And old Coach Warren still coaches with us. I mean, he's, 70 years young at this point and has all sorts of energy. I swear he's a vampire because I've aged like 50 years, in the time that he and I had started doing this thing together. But he graciously allowed me to help him out as a volunteer.
Is Parkway your alma mater?
It is. So I went to
I didn't know that.
Awesome.
high school. I graduated from there in 1997. And so it was kind of weird at first to go back and work and coach alongside people who had just 4 years earlier, been people that taught me, and were like the authority figures and important people in my life.
How's that feel, Aaron?
It can be a little weird, that's for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Same boat. I started coaching there. I graduated in 2007, and I was back in 2016 coaching. Same thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, and that there's a little bit of space there, like, so you have what would that be, 9 years in between, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, 9 years.
So at least you're like an adult, like I'm coming
Sure.
right out of college, and these guys still see me as a kid, and honestly, in many ways, I was, and thankfully, my mom was right, and after a week of doing it, I realized, well, I've got to change my entire plan. This is something that if I enjoy doing this for free, it's the highlight of my day for 2 hours or whatever a day. How cool would this be to make it my career where I'm doing this all day and changing the trajectory of kids' lives? And so that what brought me into coaching.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that, the story of you started it and then said, I'm going to uproot everything else I wanted to do because this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, and, people early on asked me like, oh my God, I can't believe you passed up that opportunity to work for that guy. And that guy ended up being one of the most powerful people on planet Earth at one point. And it's like, well, okay, but it didn't play out the way that person probably wanted it to. And how would that have worked out for me?
Right.
I was so young and so naive, what I've been taken advantage of, and I look at all this stuff that I've gotten to do as an educator and a coach. That's like 1,000 times more exciting than probably any of the stuff I would have been able to do in DC that was legal, So.
I transitioned away from engineering to coaching a few years ago, and it's the same thing. Like, there's some things that I miss, but I'm like this every day. Like, and teaching is there's good days and bad days, but just in general, like my worst day now is so much better than any of my bad days in my old jobs. Like, and they just teach kids how to make stuff all day long. It's way more fun.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that, education, people always joke the 3 best things about education are June, July, and August. But the reality is that the best thing is like literally being invited to somebody's wedding that you were a teacher for or coach for. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool. That means you've really impacted that kid.
Yep.
I had that opportunity this past summer of one of the first kids I coached who invited me to his wedding. And that was a feeling that, man, when I got that invite in the mail, it was like, there's like,
Right.
why me? Why would you have chosen me out of all your friends and everything else? Like, why?
Right.
It's such a weird feeling, but man, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it worth it.
For sure.
Really cool. So excuse me. So I just want a quick touch on your college side of it. When did you sleep? How did you sleep?
Well,
Speaking of vampires,
actually, great question. So I've never been asked that ever in any of these podcasts. So I didn't sleep my freshman year of college. I started the fraternity my freshman year. We started the chapter, and it was an international fraternity. And a lot of people who don't know the intricacies of the social space of Carthage is most of the campus is Greek, but most of the campus is local fraternities that only exist at Carthage College. So you talk about like the Animal House nonsense and like some real sketchy traditions and stuff like that. And I'm like, look, I don't want anything to do with hazing the hell out of people or being slapped with a paddle or any of that kind of stuff. And when we played, I actually ended up getting mono my freshman year in the fall. I actually had to take a month away from school, and I came back and I was coaching a 7-on-7 flag football team or whatever, which was a bunch of freshman guys, and we were playing all of the fraternities. And I'm like, these guys, these guys are kind of jerks. Like, I don't want to be a part of any of their organizations. And I don't trust them at all. And I'm like, we should just start our own. And one of my fraternity brothers pushed that hardcore and really did a lot of the groundwork. And then he and I ended up being kind of the principal founding fathers of the fraternity. But I did not sleep. And I would go to bed often at 3 o'clock in the morning because, you got to get your homework done and all that stuff too. And then I had a class. I had rocks for jocks. I had geology. And that was at 7 o'clock in the morning. So then I had to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and go to class. Now, I was a young guy, as we all once were, and I was able to do that. Okay.
You think back to being younger, and I'm like, I can barely make it past 11:30 p.m. right now. Yeah. And I was up doing whatever until 2 a.m. every night.
Oh yeah, I hit that couch, man, and it's like it knocks you out better than any possible drug you could ever be on. It's like, so if I go onto that couch and the kids are watching some cartoon I've seen 25 times, I mean, that is the best sleep therapy ever. I am snoring, I am out, I'm drooling. But it's funny because like you can do that for like a year. And I did do that for like a year. But then after that, I must have burnt all my life's ability to do that. And I did set up my classes to be a little later in the morning and stuff. But I mean, I had horrible sleep paralysis. And it was every night. It would be like every morning. Can I get up? Can I get up? I'm staring at the wall, and it was awful because I just did not take care of that end of it. And then, lo and behold, here I am complaining. I don't know why I can't stay healthy. And I don't know why, I'm not getting the performances that I want. And it's like, yeah, bro, because you're like literally living like a frontline soldier in World War I, and you're expecting to be able to compete. What the hell's wrong with you?
We need to clip that one and send it to the teenagers, honestly.
Yeah, there we go.
I didn't run well yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, and the distance kids would drive me nuts. Like in college, like if the distance guys would go and drink, first of all, they were hammered after one beer, right? And then they would be annoying because they wouldn't pass out, So they would just be annoying for like 8 or 9 hours. And then they'd get up on their long runs on a Sunday, like, oh, coach doesn't know what he's done. I'm like, well, maybe if you weren't drunk all the time, and I was always, by the way, everybody who's listening to this, I was always the sober driver. Like always, because I wanted to get my friends home, my teammates home, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm still up with them, trying to get them home. And I was always like, hey, just give me a red Solo cup and a Coca-Cola, and I'm good to go. And I'll get you home safe. And 40 years later or 30 years later, I've got type 2 diabetes, and I'm like, well, maybe I should have had a few more of those beers. I might have been better off having 10 Cokes and Coca-Colas a night. That's funny. So
that is funny. Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like when you talk about people being vampires, you're the pot calling the kettle black there because. All right. So tell us now a little more. Where do you coach? Where do you work? Let's just make sure we have that.
Yeah. So I'm a coach at Parkway Central High School, where I went. I've been coaching there since 2002, which was the spring that I volunteered for Coach Warren. In 2003, I got the head girls job, and I had to trick them into giving me the job. I was the absolute last hire, or last person they wanted to hire. We were about 2 weeks out from the season, and I wanted to coach Parkway Central because first of all, a larger team than the school that offered me a job like after I coached cross country for them in the fall at a different place. And so I called them up and I'm like, hey, the school up the street, wants me to coach there. And I kind of need to let them know. And we're only 2 weeks away from the season. And the girls' job had opened up because the coaches that were there had all taken different positions at different schools. One of them became an administrator, basically like the superintendent of the school district. Another guy got a job at a really nice private high school. And so the position was laid open, and all of the other potential people in the building wanted nothing to do with the paperwork of being a head coach. And so I was just last option. And even in that situation, they waited until 2 weeks before the season started to hire me. And I had to tell a white lie to kind of push them into being like, all right, we'll give you the position, 2
weeks is a luxury, by the way. Yeah. I got the head job at Byron Center, I think 4 days.
Oh no,
4 days. Friday before, Thursday before, whatever it was.
Aaron thought that he was going to be the only coach for 150 kids.
Oh my
I'm
god!
like, I got this. We can do it. Throws coach. I can figure it out.
Anyway, so 2 weeks that's plenty of time.
Yeah, yeah.
Plenty.
It's scary. So, did you guys have the boys and the girls then at your place?
Yeah, So I'm head coach for boys and girls. So we just every event coach just covers
Right.
both sides. It works out pretty well.
Good. Well, yeah, like we depending on the year, we'll have anywhere from 130 to 150 kind of total. So like our programs are split. The boys coach, who's Coach Warren still, who is my high school coach, the guy's been coaching for 50 years, is in charge of the boys team. And I've been in charge of the girls team since 2003. But we don't have a lot of crossover, but we're doing more crossover than ever. And we can kind of talk about why that is as we evolve in the conversation here.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Give us a quick rundown since you've been there, accolades of the team. Doesn't have to be anything, but
well, like there was like the coaches who were there before me started to set the table for doing some good things. And those coaches for the first time ever kind of showed girl athletes like, hey, you can be athletic. But the year that they left was kind of a downturn amongst 4 years of them kind of building. And so kind of left with just a handful of sprinters and stuff like that. But that first year we broke the school record in the 100, the 200, the 400, the 4x1, and the 4x2. And you'll notice I didn't say the 4x4 because back in the day I was like Mr. Feed the Cats before Feed the Cats was a thing, and realized later that was actually not the way I probably should go as a Missouri high school track and field coach.
Isn't that the funny part? Like the context, like in general, we can don't need to derail completely right now, but like I generally do feed the cats is what we do here, but like it's not exactly like Tony does it because we're a different high school, different location, different demographic, and yeah, I love taking the important stuff and then figuring out how to make it work.
Yeah, for sure. And if I was in Illinois where you have to make a decision between the 200 and 400 twice. You have to make a decision between the 200 and 400 with the 4x4. The 200 is right in front of the 4x4. And you have to make a decision for the 400 because the 4x2 is right in front of it. Also in Illinois, they have a full-fledged indoor season, and they have what's called top times, which is basically a state championship. A lot of schools in Illinois have an indoor track. Okay. So now you're going from January to June. Well, that's different. I would train differently if I'm in that situation as well, because how do I keep kids engaged in that for that long? So there's all sorts of stuff there. And then, from the sprint side, you got to make choices. So it's like, well, I'd rather do this and get more kids to come out and have more kids have fun. Where in Missouri, all the sprint events pretty much are protected by a distance race in between. And so I can then do lots of things where that might not be the case for him. And then in addition, like in Missouri, we can compete every Saturday. So then I don't necessarily need to do where I have to pick and choose my workouts. I can lay out my workouts what I feel in an appropriate manner and not interfere with competition, where some states that's not the case. And then Tony, he does 2 meets a week. And uses that as the endurance work, and we don't have to do that in Missouri. We don't have our conference doesn't matter for dual meets, right? But some people that does. And so that's a different situation. But so it took me a while to kind of figure out how to do things after that first year. The first year, we broke all those records, and I already have one of the biggest heads on the planet. And I thought I knew everything, and I knew nothing. It was like one of the worst things that could have happened to me. And it took so my first season was 2003, and it took until 2007 for me to really put the track side together. But after that, there's just been a nice steady evolution to becoming a better track and field coach, and also a better facilitator of my assistant coach's talents and identifying my athletes' talents and putting them in the best event for them. So with all
That's
of that
huge.
being said, yeah, it eventually led to us being, we've won 9 conference titles in a row. We're working on our 10th.
Let's go.
Yeah, man. And if we get our 10th, we will have the longest streak of any sport in all 4 of the Parkway high schools, either gender, ever.
That's cool. So cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so like, I usually don't care about conference, but we just win because of the system and the nature of the program. And so it would be heartbreaking
Yeah.
if we didn't get it. So it's a big deal. But outside of that, if you're a top 4 U trophy in the state of Missouri, you're a Final Four team. As a team at state, we've gotten 9 of those in track and field. We just got 1 in cross country. I've coached the school or the state record holder in the 2-mile, the 4x8, the 100 hurdles, which is kind of a weird combination. We have
Same guy, right?
What's that?
Same guy, right?
Yeah. It's kind of a weird combo, But yeah, no, a lot of different kids over a lot of different years. So we've had a lot of success. We've had 180 all-state athletes. I had a kid set a national record. Some really cool stuff. I've been blessed to coach some very talented kids and have some really cool coaches who have come along with me on this journey to develop a culture that seems to be sustainable. It's never easy, but through the hard work and some of the things we've built in, we've been able to do some stuff that very few programs have been able to do. Now, we haven't won the team title very often. We've only won 1 team title, but we've been the bridesmaid a lot,
Okay.
and top 4 is kind of the goal. It's like we always want to try to trophy.
Top 4, if you're repeating that, then it's hard to win a state title in track. There's so many variables.
You're not kidding.
There are so many variables. Like, you can have a freaking good team, and then either something bad happens in a relay, or somebody's got that freak who scores 30 points all by themselves. Like,
Right.
It's just hard.
I've done it both ways. Like, we had a freak. Like, we had a young lady who her junior year won 4 events, and broke the state record in the 100 hurdles twice. Then went out and won the 100-meter dash, then won the 300 hurdles, and then won the 200. And then last year she won 3, but they took one of the divisions out of our meet and put it a weekend earlier, so she had less time.
Oh, okay.
So she basically broke her state record again and then had to go run down to the start line. And then there was a girl who's extremely talented, broke the state record. And so it took a state record for her to not repeat, to be an 8-time champion in her last 2 years as a high schooler. Super talented kid. Unbelievable. So I've done it that way. And then I've done it where it's like, hey man, we're getting points from pretty much every event group, so each are fun and interesting, and I think that's kind of the joy of track. But I have definitely clutched victory or defeat out of the jaws of victory. I have done that. I have made mistakes that have probably cost us a place or two in the state championship. And those things will bother you forever.
Oh yeah, they do. I've got one of those from last year, and it's not going to happen again. And
Yep.
But that's the key though. Like, if you learn from that, like, make enough of those mistakes that you hate, and like, that's how, if you can compartmentalize that and learn from it, that's how you get good.
Right, exactly. You don't want to, like, have you lived 2 decades worth of experience, or have you relived the same year 20 times over? It's like, well, if that situation happens, we're never getting to that again. We're never letting that happen again, and thankfully we have reduced those things. And like you said, it's like, if you're going to win, you got to be lucky, you got to be good, and you just got to have a couple things go your way. In addition, like like you said, if there's somebody out there dominant and they're just nickel and diming you in the things you're good at too, but they're just a little better, and then all of a sudden there's another team out there that's not in your events, so you have no way to play defense and track.
Yeah.
You just put your performance out there and see where the chips are.
Yep. Well, that's awesome. Congratulations. I mean, those are huge accolades and well-deserved. I mean, it takes a lot to get there, and you're putting in the work and having some amazing athletes who are allowing that to happen. So, all right, you kind of covered one of them a little bit earlier, but well, maybe you didn't. But favorite part about coaching track?
My absolute favorite part about coaching track is watching the relationships that build between the athletes, where these people who are very different come together in this common cause and end up becoming best friends and end up, being in each other's weddings, being the godmother of their kids eventually, celebrating the arrival of a baby. And I would imagine, and we haven't had this happen yet, but hopefully it doesn't happen for many decades, but also these kids will be at each other's funerals, and reading their eulogies to each other. And I know that sounds kind of melodramatic, but it's like, I love to build lifetime friendships. If I can facilitate that and help that out, then that's amazing. And then what I love is to see kids that never thought they could be athletic, because track and field is always kind of the last chance of sport right?
Yep.
And it's one of those things where, well, I'll come out, but I got club volleyball or softball, or we shouldn't even call it club, that you should call it cult volleyball and cult softball. But anyway,
no arguments.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, 10 out of 10, no notes, but it's one of those things where, like, I love to see the kids blossom into that and achieve things that they never thought that they were going to do. To see the predictions that I made for a kid, a promise I made for a kid, to come to fruition, like to have them finally be able to believe something in themselves that they didn't believe at first, that somebody else believed before they could, like those things they're like crack. They are incredibly addictive.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like
I couldn't agree more.
Winning. I love winning. Hate losing, but like you do this long enough, it's gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. So that's just the thing that, like, you're right. It's just addicting seeing the cool intangible, the not measurable stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Those two are dating now. Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny.
Or the kids for us who, I don't know if they do it in Missouri, or maybe it's different per school, but you can do a sport and get your gym credit. And to see kids who come out knowing that that's what they're there for, and then for whatever reason they're there their junior year and then senior year because they love it, because they fell in love with it, because all of a sudden they go, hey, I can do this. It's amazing. It's awesome to watch.
It is. And
Awesome.
It's one of those things where, like, we had a kid who's the varsity point scorer all-time career for us, and her name's Eliana Liedman. She ended up jumping Division I, and a small Division I school. But the only reason why she came out is because I sent her home a recruiting letter. I had her PE track stats, so I wrote a little bold-faced paragraph in the middle of our standardized recruiting letter. It was written to the parents, so the parents open it up. It's sitting on her island in her kitchen. She comes home with her best friend. Her best friend says, I'm doing track. You should join track with me. Convinces her friend convinces her to come out, and she ends up being our school record holder in the long jump, second all time in the triple jump, and at the time, third all time in the 400. She was all state in all of those things multiple times, all the relays multiple times. Also could run a pretty damn good 100, could run a solid 200. She probably could have been an amazing pole vaulter and high jumper, but we just didn't have time. And it's like those little moments of consequence that seem so inconsequential when they first happen, really makes it just a beautiful thing to be a part of.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, not just what is your favorite part, but give us one or two your most important lessons that you have learned from coaching. From your time coaching,
So the biggest one I would tell you is it's not about you, it's about them. That's the biggest one.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty self-evident, but I think it's hard for us to come to that, and winning truly does allow it to be easier for that to happen. Once you've done some of the check box items, and get those off the list, it makes those things easier. But at the end of the day, it really is about them. No one is going to remember you when you retire after 4 years. You're going to be forgotten. They're like, why is this meat named after this guy? Henry Holmes? Well, he was a coach in the 1970s, and he had a pretty good track and field time. And they ran yards and miles and not meters. So none of his records even are there, and it's like, you're never going to get the credit you deserve. And you're probably going to take the blame more than you deserve. And so at the end of the day, it's really about those kids having a good experience. Now, I can tell you as an only child who, I've been told often can be too self-centered, that it's not easy to do that all the time. Like that is going to be a lifelong challenge. And the second thing I tell you is that commit to being a lifelong learner.
Yes.
Kids are going to change in terms of what society puts upon them, what society puts upon you. The sport is going to evolve. Who are the heroes is going to change, and then also methods are going to change. Be open-minded. The more you can put in your toolkit, the better chance you are going to have the tool that you need for a particular kid with a particular set of skills that will then allow them to flourish, to maximize their potential within your program. And the more that you can become a master generalist, the better you have at being able to do that over time. Like, I wish I could apologize to those kids that I first started coaching, and I wish I could apologize to the kids I coached 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and you're going to evolve like that over time, hoping that you're getting better, creating systems and logistics that smooth out the rough parts in your program, and that you're just constantly dialing these things in over time by being that lifelong learner. It's like when I heard Tony talk, I was like, man, I'm no way Jose at all. And then over time, I'm like, well, maybe in this circumstance, or maybe in this situation, or, oh, I see the value in this. Oh, I understand why a person would choose to do these things or do that, or, or man, maybe I'm making this way harder than it needs to be. How do I simplify my message?
That happens all the time. Like I go in, I don't start like some on the distant head coach and distance coach. I don't start the distance plan completely from scratch every year, but you refine it, right? Same method when I come to adjust things. And I'm always like, man, this is too simple. But it probably should be though. Like,
well, and what's his name? Harry Morrow, the guy who coached Ashton Newton, okay, and Bria, the other the Canadian medal. Yeah. So when he taught, I've gotten to see him speak a couple times, and he's incredible. He's incredible. He's a very old guy, but you'd never know it. Like, he's just tons of energy, super sharp, great, just wonderful soul, very altruistic kind of guy. Anyway, so when he used to do this mental exercise every year, he would write everything he knew about all of the events in the decathlon. And then, at first it was just like a paragraph, right? And then as he moved forward, it became pages and pages of notes about every event. And then as he got older, it's come back down to a paragraph again. And it's like, when you have truly kind of become a master, you could be so efficient in your ability to push the right buttons and connect all of these different things into the main thing, right? That you don't have to do 80,000. It doesn't have to be super complex. It's this wild kind of, cyclical thing that we go through in our career. Like we come into the world in diapers, right? We leave the world in diapers,
Mhm.
right? We have to be taken care of, right? Or we can't survive. And then we end up being the person that does the taking care of. And then we end up getting hopefully taken care of. Thank God I got 2 daughters, so like when that happens, one of the 2 will like me enough to still help me out,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, as a throws coach, I can totally get behind all of that, because when it comes down to it, it's the same things over and over with every person. But it comes to how you can have that conversation, how you can teach these kids, what cue you can give them to make it happen. And every person's different.
totally.
I can give the same cue to 10 different people, and one of them might get it, none of them might get it. But the one who gets it, all of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And all of a sudden, it's like,
Right.
boom, there it is.
Right.
And you're trying to make it a very simple thing to make them do. Now, there's a lot of little pieces that go into it, but it's a very simple thing. But how do you get them to understand it, get them to have their body understand it?
Correct.
And a lot of that comes, like you said, comes from experience of being able to figure out how to take a very simple thing, overcomplicate it, which I've done. I can't tell you how many times, but then bring it back in to go, hey, when it's all said and done, we're just trying to get this. If you get this, you're going to be 90% of the way to where you want to be.
Don't you mean this here?
Yeah, this here. Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you can get that, you're 90% of the way where you want to be. But
yeah,
like you said, it comes from overcomplicating it, trying everything under the sun to make that happen, going, well, none of this worked. Why did I do any of this? To coming back going, hey, what if we just tried? What if we just do this? We know this works. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Trying to figure out how to make sure it's simple enough to just get the job done and to be repeatable year after year.
Yeah.
The don't let perfect get in the way of good.
Oh, totally.
Exactly.
Well, Dan Path talked about that too. I love all these like master coaches, and Dan Path would say like, don't let perfect be the paralysis of progress, or something to that degree. I might be paraphrasing him a little bit, but like, the idea is like, this is what he said. He's like, you don't want a perfect system. He goes, you want a robust system. He goes, a perfect system is actually incredibly vulnerable because it requires everything to line up exactly the way it's supposed to be for this output. Instead, you should be more robust, because a robust system will allow you to absorb the impediments or challenges or things that you confront, and you can still figure out a way to get the best version of whatever you're trying to accomplish out of it, even in really gnarly circumstances.
Yep. That's it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. All right. Let's go to this year. What is one thing one athlete, whatever you want to look at it, that you're looking forward to? I think you kind of touched base trying to go for 10 straight, right?
Yeah.
But what else? I mean, what else are you looking forward to? What is something that isn't that you're like, hey, this is it?
So what I love is every season, the first day of track and field is like Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. Like I want to open up all the presents I got. It's like, man, there's all these opportunities to have some fun here with this. This is going to provide a lot of entertainment. This is going to be entertaining. And each team comes with new opportunities. So like we have a very strong throw squad. We have a very, very strong distance squad, probably the deepest distance squad I've maybe ever had. But
isn't that the important part right there?
Well, you Michigan guys, I know you like your distance, and it gets a little cold up there to run fast outside sometimes. But yeah, I mean it depends on what your program is. Like I always have tried to be the coach that I want to have a similar level of cross country program and track and field program. I want to be good at both. I don't want track to be preseason for cross country, and I don't want cross country to be preseason for track. I want them to both be really good. But in the absence of the superstar that we had for the last 2 years, Sky Lee, well, we've had it's funny because we usually have a lot of depth in the sprints. I'm supposed to be the sprints guy, right? And we've had her, and so in some respects, there's a lot of people who, we're like, well, I can't beat her, so why would I try that event? She's going to dust me. It's like, no, you can still be better than everybody else besides her, and then talent just ebbs and flows. Our cross country program was so like modest right before COVID. And then COVID made it that much harder because of lockdowns that it's taken until last year, 2 falls ago and this fall for us to be in a place where I feel like, yeah, our cross country team is pretty strong, just like our track and field team is. And talent ebbs and flows. You have gaps. So now I have almost an embarrassment of riches in distance, where 4 years ago I had an embarrassment in riches in sprints. These things just happen. So what I'm looking forward to, besides the unknown, right, which is exciting, the mystery
That's awesome.
is exciting, right? But the other thing is, like, I want to make sure that I set the table for these young kids that have some sprint talent to really walk into their potential, right? To step into their potential and to actually become the athletes that can be state qualifiers, that can be on a state relay. And I think we have a mix of kids that nobody, if you looked them up on Mile Split, you'd be like, well, where are these people coming from? Well, some of them are freshmen, right? Some of them are sophomores who kind of figured it out at the end, right? But they just ran out of season, and some of these kids are kids that we're going to shift events for them and find a new opportunity for them to be really competitive for us. So the mystery, the challenge is great opportunities for us to explore things that kids would normally not have to explore because there was somebody there to take care of it for them.
The freshman and sophomores thing that's always fun. Like, and that's one of the things I love about track is seeing the kids grow up. It's always so hard to say goodbye to that 4-year kid who's just like, not like whether they're a stud or not, like who's just, a cornerstone of a teammate.
Right.
But when you see, this today in the weight room, today in off-season weight room, I was like, this kid has put on like 3 inches and 30 pounds in a good way since last year. And I texted Aaron, like, we have to put a disc in this kid's hand. Like, right. He looks like the prototype right now. And that's just so fun when you're like, and maybe like you try it and you're like, oh no, never mind. That didn't work. Maybe he's not coordinated enough, but still, like, some of the preseason, I wonder what this kid could do. That's
right. Right. And that's what's so funny about the evolution of an individual season is there's a lot of excitement. And then, depending on if you coach boys or girls, you can get broken up with in a track. You're always there. I say I get dumped by about 10 girls every year, who decide that they're just not going to come back. And it's fine. Usually those kids are kids that are not real competitive, and I get it. But my goal is to keep as many kids for as long as I can by providing them all those opportunities through that mystery of being like, hey, I bet you could hurdle. I bet you could throw the discus. I think you might be able to high jump, and we do a lot of things to facilitate that. And one of the things is like all my returning kids do a lot of our first week testing, even if they already have an established event. Because it's like, well, that might be your best event, but now you've had an entire season underneath you and you've seen somebody throw the discus. So now you kind of have a concept of what that looks like. Are you in your mind's eye better able to do a trail leg on a hurdle, right? Are you now understanding the approach better to a high jump? And what we found is that these kids through that process have been able to pick up new events and skill sets. And that's what allowed us to kind of have that growth over time, and with guys, it's so fun because they're almost like a cheat code. they just get better and better. I mean, the reason why people take steroids to be better athletes is because testosterone is a pretty powerful thing. These boys go from having high-pitched, squeaky voices to becoming men, with beards and chest hair and a bad mullet, and all this kind of stuff, and they just evolve in front of your eyes. And so, like, in both genders, both sexes, like there's fun parts to that mystery,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, our current best thrower this year, coming out one of our good seniors, he started his freshman year. He's an 800-meter runner. He actually has some pretty good times.
So it was we do club indoors here, right? And he was a freshman at a club meet and hadn't done a ton of running. I thought he was a middle distance runner because he ran middle distance in middle school.
Right.
I remember, so he led off on the 4x8 at one of our middle school home meets, and he was an 8th grader, and he got them a huge lead, just ginormous lead,
right?
And they lost, and so he's reading the riot act to these other little boys,
right?
He's like, "You lost that for us," and he's so mad. Anyway, so I'm like, "Oh, that's the kid that I'm gonna have to deal with next year, huh? I wonder about that." Right. Turns out he's a really good dude.
Yeah, he is.
But so he runs like a 2:15, completely untrained indoors, which it's modest. Like 2:50, right. But for a freshman who I didn't really guide into that between 8th grade to 9th grade, that's promising.
Right.
And then he starts throwing, and the rest is history.
Right.
But the funny part about it is he's a senior. He's never ran this before, but there's an outside joke, but I think it's probably going to happen at least once this year that he's going to be on our 4x4 team.
Right. Right.
He also has a chance to do some pretty unique things, in throwing this year, even at the state level. So it's like, he's one of those guys that just kind of grew into it, and to see that come from, he was an 800-meter runner. He still could potentially have been, but to see what he is now is fun to see.
Well,
and
that's
there's lots of stories.
Yeah, and it's like, hey man, you have this talent, and you could be really good for us here, but you could be really, really good statewide here. And a young man he's not a young man anymore. He's actually probably in his mid-30s at this point, but a guy by the name of Will Paul, he played for Michigan, and they couldn't figure out where to put him because he was just kind of good at everything, it was just like a kind of a jack of all trades. He played defensive line for a while. He played tight end for a while. He played fullback, I think, at the end. But he was an all-state thrower, and he led off the 4x1. And that's when they were in the largest class, and they made it to the state championship. And it was hilarious to see this 6'5", not kidding, 270-pound kid just squish himself into some starting blocks, and he did not embarrass himself. He was an incredible athlete. And I'm like, man, some people just, God gives with both hands, in that particular situation. But, we had a girl, similar situation. She was really fast, like in the 100. But if you watched her run and you watched her block start and you watched her mechanics, she was teeny tiny, just like this little, like skinny, just itty bitty mouse of a person, Well, some coaches, would go, well, that kid's going to be my best sprinter because she's currently my best sprinter. But as she continued to come through the track and field season her freshman year, she got faster as the events got longer. To where basically her freshman year is she became a pretty awesome 4x4 anchor leg as a freshman, right? And it's like, well, wait a second, is she in the right event? You know what I mean? And we just kept moving. And then she said, I want to come out for cross country. And it was so funny because we locked eyes on each other from across an auxiliary practice field after school. And we're walking up with the intention of saying the same thing to each other. And I said, Liz, I'm so good to see you. I wanted to talk to you about, I thought I have this idea. And she's like, well, what's that? And I said, well, I really think you should join our cross country team. I normally don't ask sprinters to do this, But I said, I feel like there's something there that could be great. She goes, well, Coach Guilfoyle, which is always good to have friends who will help you out in other programs. He said I should do it too. Well, long and short of it is she ended up her senior year being the fastest girl in the state of Missouri in the 800. She won our Festival of Miles in the 800. She was all state in cross country. And she's the first girl that's from the inner city of St. Louis, because we have busing. We used to bus kids out from the inner city for desegregation program out to the county school. And she's the first African-American female from the city to be all state in cross country since 1983. Now she's graduated. She's got a law degree now. You know, she ran for DePaul, you know, in Chicago and did all sorts of fun stuff. But it's like, that's the fun thing, you know, like, hey, we think it's going this way, but whoa, what about this? That's pretty neat. What if we try that out? And then all of a sudden it becomes, that's the best thing they're at. And by not being so myopic, where it's like, this is the only thing I do, you know, it allows you to kind of see a bigger picture and go, well, all right, actually, I think this piece fits the best here, not just for me to win, but actually for them to succeed in the best way they can succeed.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that goes back to what you're talking about earlier of us as coaches. It's not always easy to be able to kind of turn and look for that because, you know, the ego side of it's like, no, she's here. I have this. Why am I going to change it? But to be able to come in and say, hey, we want to make this change because it's better for her in the long run. And you don't know if it's going to be.
Right. You're making an educated guess. Yeah.
You are. But then when it works out, you're like, holy cow. Look how much, you know, look how much better her career was, how much better she was, how much more confident she is because of that. Yeah. And it's not easy for us to be able to do all the time, right?
No. Well, and our egos too, right? Like the thing I had to learn, and it took me a really long, again, the many evolutions of me as a coach. It took me a real long time to go, look, like other people, even if they don't have the detailed knowledge or even the just total obsession with track and field like you do, if they're your assistant coach, they need to have talented kids. They have to go through the same process that you went through so that these kids can evolve, and then maybe they get more into it, and then they're maybe more obsessed about it because now they've become kind of this guru of the javelin or the long jump. Like our one of our assistant coaches, our best field events, the triple jump. She never triple jumped, and that wasn't even her thing really, but it became her thing, you know, and she was incredible. And we've had tons of really good triple jumpers in our school. And now it's like, and as a coach, my first couple of years, I would have been like, nope, sprinter. I need all the kids. I need all the talented kids. Nobody else gets anybody good. You get the D-level kids. Good luck. You know?
Yeah. That's awesome. It's not easy to do, but when you can do it, it can make some big changes.
Totally.
Yep.
All right. Let's go into kind of one final question here just to see where everything is at. And if we have a little time, we can go into one more. But if you could change something right now, currently in, you know, I guess for you over Missouri, but if you could change something, what would you want to change? Or, you know, if there's something that we're currently doing in Michigan that you would like to see, or something that Missouri is doing that you'd like to see happen other places?
Well, I would say the biggest mistake that Michigan does is that it doesn't celebrate its athletes by allowing them to compete at national championships, or national indoor meets, or you know, whatever the class meet might be. I know you guys can go to Ohio and I believe Indiana.
I'm pretty sure that it's the bordering
changed. Right.
It's the bordering states. I looked into it for Penn relays because I was curious. And in season. So we could go to New Balance Nationals. Maybe actually because it's in season this year we couldn't.
Right.
Because it's the end of the first week of practice for us. So that might not be allowed this year.
Right.
But we can go to outdoor nationals because that's after the state championship.
Yeah.
But still, it's like you can tell they don't like it.
Right. Right. And the thing is what's weird to me is I don't understand. Are you worried that your best kids are going to be lost to like the ING Academy or Bullis in Washington, D.C.? Like the chances of that happening are so slim to none.
So slim.
Yeah. And for me, it's like, I want my athletes to be able to be celebrated. And if they have an opportunity, now, again, they got to want to do it too. Like, because we could go to, because of our mile times, we could probably, they have a thing where you could put a thing together and we could go run the 4x mile indoors. But I'm not doing that unless the kids really want to do that. I'm not going to go out to Eugene, Oregon for Nike Nationals unless my kids really want to do that. But that frustrates the crap out of me, and that's something I really want to see changed, because I think, your state has been ridiculously successful, which is one of the things where people be like, well, that's the reason why we don't need to do it. Well, maybe, but you're also missing, if you've got like these super elite kids in your state and they can't go challenge somebody at Penn Relays, or they can't challenge somebody in, I don't know, Illinois, right, at an indoor meet, like, that's unfortunate, because that undermines their ability to get the best time, the best performance. And truthfully, now with like NIL money and all this kind of stuff, you might be taking food off of that kid's table at the most elite level. Now, at the lower levels, and for like just in general, we got to figure out what we're going to do with this sport. And what I mean by that is that I am very concerned about the college world track and field. We just keep giving more money to people who already have the most money. And by the way, I want people to make money. I do. Okay. But I don't know if you catch 25 balls for the University of Illinois that you necessarily deserve $1.5 million. And then we're going to totally just get rid of the track and field program.
Right.
Or get rid of the men's team at, what was it, Central Michigan.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like that's so frustrating. And the thing is that we, as a group of people who are into it and have been alumni, like, there needs to be a bigger push for us to organize ways to make this sport make money. Like, number one, all college track meets need to be scored. You need to score them, because if you don't score them, then they can go, well, you don't need 35 people on your track team or your cross country team. You don't need that, because really, Arkansas won the women's title with like 10 girls.
Right.
So like, that's all you really need. When you and I both know, well, okay, your football team only played 28 guys, that played significant time.
How come they need 100 scholarships?
Correct. 125 scholarships, and it's like absurd. And if they're going to start taking our tax dollars to pay those guys, it's like, look, my tax dollars already go to pay for them to go to school for free. I don't want my money being taken for these guys, especially to undermine my sport.
Right.
And there are a lot of,
you've got the SEC saying, oh, 45 is the new roster limit. No, we'll go to 35.
Right.
That's kind of a problem.
And they're the SEC. And when I found out about that, like, I reached out to the one SEC school in Missouri's head coach, who's a friend of mine, and I go, what are you guys doing? This is a big, this then means that you're setting the tone for the rest of the NCAA to say, we don't really need that. Now, I think part of that was, well, then what we can do is we can take that 35 plus the 10 or 15 or whatever they had for cross country, and then we can mix and match those people and not go over our limit. So like, basically anybody who's a distance kid is going to be a cross country scholarship, and anybody who's a track and field kid will then be a track and field kid, even though they're allowed to then do more, do the indoor and outdoor season. And obviously a track kid somehow could become a cross country kid as well and run cross country. It just gives them a little bit of flexibility to make sure that sport in the fall can still be successful, but every meet needs to count. They need to start scoring these things. And the thing is like, if you're a big school like Mizzou in my state, you might not want to run against Lincoln University, that's perennially the Division II champ. They got Jamaican kids there all the time, and it's like, well, they might beat us. So then you need to create a team that can not only score 20 points at a national championship, but also can win invitational meets. Like back in the day, when UCLA and USC had a dual meet against each other, they would pack the stands because it was bragging rights. Everybody knew, oh, that guy just got first and second. That's this many points. Just like in a baseball game where you would score it's a 2-1-3 or whatever it is where they're throwing around. I don't know baseball at all, but people used to score that all the time, and it was really interesting. And it's like, well, that's not interesting for other people, but it's like, yeah, but it's interesting for track people. It's interesting for baseball people. And so like, you've got to keep that thing. It's like, well, why did that used to be such a big deal? Because it mattered. It mattered if you beat USC. It mattered if you beat UCLA. It mattered. It was bragging rights, and bragging rights with people within your own community, and like, Michigan's got a ton of colleges, and it's like, man, wouldn't you want to be like the Michigan college state champ? Like, that should be a meet, and people are like, oh, that's whack. Michigan would beat us every time. Maybe, but maybe if you have that, then you can adjust your roster to get bragging rights. Like, I mean, think about how big of a deal the Michigan versus Ohio State game is. Frickin' Ohio State won the national frickin' title and couldn't beat you guys in the grudge match, because that game matters so much. And people pay attention to a game that truly, on the face of it, really shouldn't have been close, but it was close because it matters. And people like it, and it's important to the alumni. And so, like, those are the things that I see with our sport. It's like, celebrate our sport. Stop undermining our sport. Don't ever make a t-shirt. And gentlemen, don't you do this. Make a t-shirt where it says, our sport is your sport's punishment.
Oh, I hate it.
Hate that.
Yeah.
So
we are literally getting an opportunity to work with the apex human beings who are magnificently designed by God to do these very unique performances of physical feats. Like, it's incredible. Like, I got to coach for a small period of time Emily Sisson, who is the American record holder in the marathon, and I know that she's done every legal thing that she can do to be the fastest American ever. And it's so incredible to know. I know she did everything right. I know she gave her entire life to it, and she's maximized who she is, and holy crap, is she fast. I mean, it's incredible. Like, she, like, if you look at her American, right, it's like 5-minute miles, for 26 plus. It's like, people don't have a clue, like, how unbelievable that is, and that should be celebrated. And we can do that. And for whatever reason, and like these things with like Noah Lyles and, Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, Noah.
The kids.
I was wondering if you were going to pull a Noah reference there and be like, who that guy? What's his name?
Yeah. He better frickin' win, because if he doesn't win, it's going to be terrible for our sport. However, I love it if he does beat him. When everybody's like, look how fast DK Metcalf is, and DK Metcalf couldn't win in Missouri, and they're like, oh, but he ran a 10.3. It's like, yeah, a high school kid in Missouri could beat him, but he's fast-ish,
Even if it doesn't happen, which I think it actually is now, right? Didn't they confirm that race is going to happen? But even if it didn't happen, the idea that there are people out there willing to go out and put that out, our premier athletes willing to go out there and make that claim,
right? Like,
that's what we need, because that brings the recognition. It brings recognition across other sports or people who wouldn't pay attention. Well, now all of a sudden they are, because you're calling out Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's my boy. Like, he's the fastest guy ever, right? Like,
right.
Well, but is he? So that, I mean, that's one of those things. Like, it brings that recognition across sports of people who wouldn't necessarily pay attention to it.
Everybody forgets that Tyreek ran in the Masters Indoor Championship a few years ago and got his butt kicked.
Yeah. This is not me.
Because nobody knows the sport.
Right. I'm 100% on board that Noah Lyles is going to make this happen. But I'm just saying, like, the idea that he's willing to go out there and say this, that makes a huge difference.
And I think that the show Sprint, the first season, was really, really good, really well done. And a lot of people didn't know the outcome of the World Championship. So there was some surprises there, where with the Olympics, too close, in my opinion, to, like it's like 2 seasons real tight back to back. And I get it. It's like it's the Olympics. You're going to get people to pay attention. We've got to ride the wave. I get it. But then they didn't have like Sha'Carri ever. She didn't talk in it at all the second season. And it's like, like you gotta figure out a way to get those people contracted to continually to be a part of it. The other thing is like when Noah Lyles is out there clowning that social media guy, I see speed or I am speed or whatever, and he's running all goofy and looking at him. It's like, no, dude, you can't do that.
Right.
You have to demolish him.
Right.
Because if you don't demolish him, then the thing is people are going to be like, oh, well, I guess
that's pretty close.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
I guess that guy is kind of fast.
It doesn't give you the same feeling as when you see it in person. Like how unbelievably, because like they're zoomed way out and the camera's just, and it needs to because it needs to catch everybody, but it's panning along. And the best thing they ever did was like 20 years ago when they had the rail camera running alongside them to give people an understanding of these people are going like when you watch freaking Asafa Powell in that when he's got the rail camera, it's like it's unbelievable. And you're like, oh, that's how fast.
Different.
Yeah, it's different. It feels different. It's visceral. And so, like, I guess in general, it's like we've got so many people doing our sport. Our sport is awesome. It is incredible. Or all these people wouldn't be doing it. What there is inherently something energizing about it, and we've just not done a good job of marketing it. And again, because there's not a lot of money, there's not a lot of shoe companies that are figured it out in terms of what they're trying to do. Like we got to get a lot of older people to start sprinting and throwing and jumping.
Yes,
because if you do that, there's more money to buy those shoes, right? Everybody likes to jog. Everybody likes to go and do couch to 5K. There's a lot of money there. But even in that, in international competition, there's not, because the Africans have done so well for so long until this year where the American men are freaking dominating, right? That you don't have anybody that, like the biggest country in the world that has the most money, has nobody to get excited about. America and the other Western developed countries need to have people that they can get excited about so that they get inspired to become that person or to become that version of themselves through that person, even if they're old.
Isn't that so weird though, that like America in general, like the recreational distance running thing is big. But for so long, we've been terrible on the world stage. We've been very, 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 very good on the world stage in the speed and power events for basically as long as I've been alive. But there's no, like, adults don't do that.
Right.
That seems backwards.
It does seem backwards to me. Like, why did you stop throwing the shot put? Like, you can still do that. You can go out and compete. I think part of it is, I mean, and I hate the UST ATF guys are going to get mad at me, but like you go to these masters competition. First of all, you don't know when they're happening, right? You don't know how to get people signed up, right? It's not done organically through other like events that would naturally attract people who might be interested in doing it. So, like for example, at every state championship should be somehow sponsored by USATF, right? And they need to have flyers and things for their local, regional, or association competitions for both summer track, and they also need to have that for masters track and field. Because like we hosted a cross country event, and 10 people showed up, for master stuff, and it's not like that. There's only 10 people that want to do that, because then you go to a turkey trot in every municipality across America, right? And there's people out there running and pulling hamstrings before they get mashed potatoes, and it's like there's obviously something to it, and we can do a better job of creating that connective tissue between the kids competition, the college competitions, and then the adults. But you have to be very intentional about it. And the organization, in my opinion, has been pretty negligent for a while with that type of stuff. And I guess I'll never get a job with them because I'm talking this way. But it's like there's so many things they can do. Like, for example,
with their current budget, I don't know if many people are going to get a job with them. So,
right. Well, that's the other thing. So, like, where's all that money going? What are you spending that money on? And how can't you make more money? Like, Tony Holler is making a ton of money through track and field. Yep. Les Spellman is making a ton of money through human performance. I know there's all these groups out in America that have a private distance coach, right? They have all these little teams, right? In all these major cities that
Run GR is Grand Rapids. Run GR is enormous. Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge, and part of that's also because of the culture of having Division II freaking national perennial power, right? In the area and at least close by, right? And so like you have all this kind of stuff. So I just they're not doing a good job of going, how can we connect all of these groups into our group?
It's I don't know if we just got to wait for people to age out or what, but it's the same thing like with officials. There's never enough officials.
Right.
I don't know if it's different in Missouri, but at MSSAA, there's not enough officials. Well, before I started coaching, I got on the email list for it. They do one training a year.
Right.
And it's like in an inconvenient part of the state at the wrong time of year. So it's no wonder we have a problem here because the people running it are they're not like your co-head coach 70-year-old guy,
right,
who's probably thriving. They're old, probably more gatekeepery 70-year-old guy, right? And that's I don't think that's the problem with USATF, the overarching organization. There's a lot of problems there. That's an entire 2-hour conversation by itself.
It is.
But I think the regional and state level, I have to assume have that same. It's just the old guys clubs.
Right.
That's an assumption. Might be wrong, but
no, it is. And there's a whole lot of different things. So like, just think about a general contractor guy. Think about your plumbers, your electricians, your carpenters, your masonry guys. Think about all of your staff that work as custodians in your building, right? Like, and they're like, a lot of these guys are elderly dudes that are just doing this as a retirement job. And you're like, but who's coming behind them? It's like, it's not like there's a lot of people that are coming in. Like, when I retire from coaching, I'm probably not going to be an official. Like, that's just not going to be something that I'm going to do. When I retire, I'm retired. But meanwhile, like up in Massachusetts, like the godfather of Massachusetts track and field is this guy, Kevin Black. And he had 20 straight conference titles. Okay. That's insane. And it was in different conferences. And this guy gave back. So it's like the organization needs to figure out like, hey, Ryan Banta, I know you haven't thought about doing this, but we really want you to do this. We really, and it's this idea of encouraging and reaching out and getting involved and getting these people to be a part of it. It's the same thing with football. There's not enough referees that now we're having to play football games on a lot of Thursdays because there's not enough referees. And part of that is our population, our fertility rate, and this gets into a whole like demographic conversation, but it has dropped. And so like you don't have the same number of people backfilling those people as they pass away or they retire. And so they're just not there. They're just more sparse.
It's the same thing. I teach CNC machining, and it's the same thing in that trade. It's all there is a retirement cliff approaching where the majority of the workforce in West Michigan is hitting retirement age, and there are not enough young dudes backfilling.
Right.
So it's a problem everywhere.
And then you do all these kind of things to get these people involved. And you do all these things. We're going to pay for this. We're going to take care of this. And it's like they do it for 2 weeks and they're like, nah, I don't want to be an apprentice. It's like, you got to be a print. No, you're. I'm only carrying stuff all day. That's not what I want to do. It's like, well,
Point.
right. It's like you have to, like that's part of it, and they don't want to do it. The other thing I would tell you too is like we've taken all of our technical classes for the most part out of our high school, and it's like there's no AutoCAD, right? There's no small machine tool type working. There's none of that stuff, right? It's all now at a different facility. But then there's this stigma, right? Yep. Of like, oh, well, you can't make it in a normal sense. Like, no, that is normal. That is a job that pays more than I get paid right now. And they have a skill. So if there's like a freaking apocalypse, they can do something. I just talk to you to death. That's not going to win me anything. So like,
hey, we haven't any this is when the asteroid hit last week. And we don't got any track clinics on the schedule.
yeah. What am I going to do? I can talk to you and make you cry and tell a heartfelt story, but that's not going to get me food.
Yeah.
And that's just all these organizations, that's the problem. It's led by people who've been there for a really long time, who have built-in roots, like you said, that kind of gatekeep. And then in addition to that, there's just not a lot of people then that can bridge that gap as we're reaching that demographic collapse. And we've spread things out so much that we've gotten comfortable with like, hey, all these different organizations can do whatever they want that are associated with us. Like, no. There needs to be direct lines of communication that are built and put in place to take care of what inevitably is going to come down the pipe. We got to concentrate and be really good at, like, we're going to be really good at 5 things, and whatever those 5 things are, youth championship, right? Getting older people back in the sport, connecting it to competitions that are built in across the country to leverage the millions and millions of people that do cross country and track and field.
Yeah.
Get really good at that and you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was pretty cool. I saw an old college teammate of mine who I didn't even know she still ran, but she ran in the Masters and they ran a 4x4. I think they won it for their age group, whatever it was. But anyway, I'm like, well, that's awesome. I didn't even know she was still involved. But to see that was really cool. Yeah. But could you imagine seeing that all the time with people that people that you've met, people that you coached who are back in? I mean, it'd be amazing.
Well, and tying it to like health and like there's all sorts of things that you could do to like run it down different lanes that you create opportunities for people that would take the risk of participating. Like when we had COVID and people like me who are type 2 diabetic and, a little overweight and stuff. And it's like, if there was ever a chance for the government to say, you know what we should do is we should have a campaign about physical fitness and competing through physical fitness, but also that it's a lifelong pursuit and that competition helps you engage in wanting to do it. Right. Because you feel really good about that. And like, why did USATF say, hey, health secretary or whoever the person is that's the representative for sport, like we should run a campaign like this, people off their butt. Like America has got an obesity epidemic, like we just can't stop eating, and it's like, it's crazy. And it's like, there's so many things that we could do to like, again, create connectivity so that more people want to do it. Like the other thing is the USATF doesn't have, they don't have a facility where they can actually have a track and field meet. Like you should probably have a facility.
Have your own facility.
Yes. So you don't have to worry about anybody else. And they're in Indianapolis, which is perfect.
Right in the middle, right in the middle of the country, right there.
It really is.
Pretty easy to get to.
Yeah. Everybody can get there except for
and it's a nice city. It's a really nice city too. I love Indy.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's super cool. The canal area is super cool and, all that stuff. And they've had USA trials at IUPUI or whatever it was back in the day. That track, I don't even think exists anymore, and it's like buy a facility, make it incredibly nice, take your time, and then that's where all of your trials are going to be. Oh, well, we like to have Olympic trials, go to these.
Eugene.
Right.
Nike.
No, right. That's great. That's nice. But you need to have your own place. So then, even if you don't want to host Olympic trials there, you can host other professional track meets there.
Right.
You don't have to rely on that and put them in big cities. Obviously they have the one that's in New York, it's in a big city, but that facility is not great.
Which one is it?
It's not Ithaca or whatever. What
Is it the one where there was the starting block drama last year?
Correct, with Fred
Yeah.
Curley kept falling
Right.
on his face. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and then he switched shoe company again somehow. You know, it's like Nike Fred was back and he ran fast again. But you know, and if you have these facilities, then you don't have to worry about Michael Johnson per se, then getting money to then try to find the facilities. Like, hey, we have the facility, right? So now you don't have to worry about it just being track. It can be track and field.
Right.
You know, we can have people kind of stay in the area where there's a lot of hotels and a big population, and then you connect it to some youth sports occasionally, and then you tie in other events near it and all that stuff. But you need a facility to do that, and you need to own it, you know. And that's the thing that I think is one of the major things that needs to get done.
Revenue stream, rent out the facility. There's some money.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all these professional teams and high school kids and all this kind of stuff, you can make a ton of money.
Yeah.
You could run camps through it. You could do all your level 2 stuff through it. Right. And then have the kids there when you're doing the level 2 USATF stuff so that you can like learn by doing. There's so much that could happen if they just thought about creating the web of all this interconnected nature of the sport, you know?
So what you're saying is we need to make Ryan Banta the USATF.
No, well,
you heard it here first.
You know, it's not happening now. And again, I don't have the connections with all the players. You know, I wish I had somebody really rich that could help me out, but you know, Elon Musk
put that poli-sci degree to good use.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, that's what my wife always told me when I get involved in all these like rules and things that we've changed in the state. And, you know, like I'm the guy who got javelin in Missouri. So if anybody becomes a peepsicle, it's going to be my fault because I'm the one who brought it to Missouri. But, you know, she's like, why do you always
want to move to Michigan to help us?
What's that?
Do you want to move to Michigan to help us?
Dude, I talked at the clinic, man. I was like, guys, there's so many things. Like you guys don't have triple jump, which is like preposterous. You know, it's like you can't paint an extra line, you know, for outdoor track. It's like, oh, it's too dangerous. A line? You know, a line? It's crazy. But yeah,
I have mixed feelings on the triple jump.
Yeah. Well, it's where good athletes go to die. But you know, if you're comfortable with it, you know, you can get a lot out of it. But yeah, dude, the javelin is I think it's actually in some respects safer than the discus because I think people have a healthy fear of a spear where frisbee they don't necessarily have as much of a healthy fear of. I think there's more accidents.
Heavy frisbee.
Yeah.
Heavy frisbee.
Yep.
So, but anyway.
Cool. Well, we had one more we were going to put on here, and I don't know if we want to. Where are we at now? Like an hour 10, hour 15 range. So maybe we'll call it there. And wasn't a big one, but anyway,
it's all good, man.
We appreciate all of your time, your insight into all this. I mean, it's every time that we do this and we have fun doing it and we enjoy, you know, it's an excuse to get together more than anything. But to somebody else that's going to give up an hour and a half when this is all said and done of your time, like we really appreciate it. It's amazing.
Well, I appreciate you guys and what you guys are doing, and any way that we can engage the sport, which what we just spent 20 minutes talking about, this is one of those things, right? This is where people can come across this for their state, you know, with the Mittens podcast, right? Where it's like Michigan focused, right? So you have a connective tissue there and you're into it. You didn't realize, oh, there's this person across town or this coach or this athlete or this story, right? And it's connective tissue. And the more connective tissue you can create, the better. And any way that, you know, I can facilitate enthusiasm in the sport or maybe piss somebody off to do something, you know, like either way, it's great, you know, and I love what you guys are doing. And I think we need more of it.
Thank you. Well, go ahead and plug your stuff before we get going here.
Sure. Yeah. I've got a bunch of stuff. I've got the Sprinter's Compendium, which is a book you can get on Amazon. There's 2 different versions of it. One sliced up into a bunch of different chapters, but I wouldn't do that. I would just buy the big book. I did the slicing for people in foreign countries to be able to buy the book without having to pay, you know, a ship worth of fuel.
It's like this. It's like this thing. It's like this thing.
Yeah, it's real big. Everybody always they don't realize how big it is until they get it, and they're like, "Oh, you weren't kidding!" I'm like, no, man, it's
Need
5.5
need a
pounds.
separate backpack just for this.
You know, and there's some spelling errors in there and stuff because I have a learning disability of spelling, but you know, it is an instrument with a lot of different coaches that have a lot of different backgrounds in sprinting, and there's something for everyone, you know, and there's a bunch of different plans in there and periodization and weight training and plyometrics and speed, and you've got anything you could ever want. And my goal was to make like a Dr. Daniels running formula for sprinting. And it's been, you know, pretty well received. So I've got that. I've got a CoachTube page as well, where I've got some of my lectures and presentation and clinics that I've done that are on there. And, you know, I have a podcast of my own as well. We're on season 2, but we're going very slow. You know, I'm doing episodes when I can. I've got Tony Holler on there for the beginning of my 2nd season, and a lot of the coaches I mentioned today, like Dan Path and Vince Anderson and people like that, were so gracious to come on and be guests of mine. And
That's also called the Sprinter's Compendium for those who want to.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, shout it out.
Companions of the compendium.
Yeah.
There can't be too many podcasts with the word compendium in them, so if it's compendium, it's got to pop up.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, come see me, guys. Reach out, connect with me on social media. I do a lot of engagement on Twitter and on Instagram, so you guys can find me there. You just type in my name, and you'll see my big ugly self show up pretty quickly.
We'll post this tomorrow. Aaron, will we get this up tomorrow? Maybe
I will do my best.
Well, the only reason I ask is because Ryan, you've got something coming up this weekend, right?
I do. I'm doing another talk, but it's a live talk. It's a Q&A with Ascent Track and Field. So they do a lot of clinics and different stuff around the country. So I'm doing stuff.
What day is that?
That's going to be Sunday night of this week. And then I'm doing a like online clinic, and then I'm going to Harvard to work their clinic. So it's kind of a 3-phase process.
Nice.
Okay.
Well, I will put it this way. I will have it up by Saturday. So that way it's up at some point Friday or Saturday to make sure that if anyone does listen to this before then, hopefully it's 1 extra, 2, 3, 4 extra on your live.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, again, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Hopefully if you made it this far, another amazing episode of Mitten Athletics Live, or, you know, we think so anyway. So take it for what it is.
Yep.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks.
Good luck, Ryan. Hopefully get number 10 here.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Same to you guys. Good luck.
Yes.
Thank you.